Whether you already own some FabFilter plugins or you're considering purchasing some, it's always helpful to understand how they compare to stock plugins. Although it's easy to see that paid plugins have some more features and options, and arguably a better interface, on a fundamental level, how different is the sound quality? Does it make a difference if you're using simple settings? And how do their small differences build up throughout an entire session? So let's compare some of the most popular plugins with stock plugins and see how they stack up. We'll look behind the scenes to find every detail of what makes them different, and then perform a blind study in which a FabFilter plugin and its stock counterpart are used back to back. So let's get into FabFilter versus stock plugins, an in-depth comparison. For part 1, we'll compare EQs. Since I'm using Logic stock plugins, it's a little difficult to look behind the scenes. Whereas I could use Plugin Doctor to check out any FabFilter plugin, Apple has hidden its plugins so that they can't be observed with a secondary program. So I'll use Burton's Curve Analyzer to measure the response in phase and sine waves to measure harmonic distortion, but I might need to get creative later on to find changes to the ADSR. So first things first, the Pro Q3 and Logic stock EQ don't use the same filters, or if they do, they result in different changes to the signal. Now finding the Q values for the Pro Q3 was a bit difficult, but it appears that a Q value of 2 equals 1 octave with the Pro Q3. For the stock EQ, a Q value of 1.4 equals 1 octave. Using 4 filters in total, 2 shelves and 2 bells, and setting their values to identical settings for both plugins, there's still a big difference. If I overlay FabFilter's response with the stock plugin, notice how much sharper the stock plugin's filters are, and this mirrors what you'd find in the FabFilter manual. Their filters are designed to be as close to analog filters as possible, whereas most DAW stock EQs have filters that don't align with how analog filters adjust amplitude. I'll defer any value judgments about this to you, but it is good to know how they differ nonetheless. Now you might have noticed that both of these plugins are latency free, but let's take a look at the ADSR. Starting with the Pro Q3, we'll notice some significant changes to the ADSR. Notice how when disabled, a sine wave that changes in amplitude has no amplitude modulation, but when I enable it, both points at which the amplitude is changed experience modulation. Now keep in mind that I'm not using linear phase processing. This is the zero latency mode of the plugin. Introducing linear phase processing makes this issue more significant, as you'd expect, with the introduction of pre- and post-ringing distortion. To measure the modulation from the stock plugin, I created an impulse response of both plugins and put them in an impulse response loader, which can be read by Plugin Doctor. Now the issue is, it's hard to tell what modulation is caused by the convolution filter and what is from the original plugin, but when comparing the Pro Q3 and the stock EQ using this method, they were similar. So it's safe to assume that the stock plugin introduces the same undesirable modulation to the test signal's ADSR. Now aside from filter shape and ADSR, neither plugin introduces significant harmonic distortion, which is to be expected. So let's listen to a mix in which both the Pro Q3 was used and Logic stock EQ was used. I've used identical settings to match them as closely as possible, but let me know if you can hear a difference or can tell which is which.
Call if you wanna. Here's your old night. Stuck in a place where the bass is a synth line. The top free, always hit right. He organizes them in pretty white lines. This word. Call if you wanna. Here's your old night. Stuck in a place where the bass is a synth line. The top free, always hit right. He organizes them in pretty white lines. This word.
For part 2, let's compare compressors. Comparing Logic stock compressor with the Pro C2 is really interesting. In some ways, the stock compressor performed better, but in other ways, they behave completely differently. For the test, I have a 100 Hz sine wave with a peak of -3 dB. This is fed into the stock compressor and the Pro C2, both of which are set to identical settings. The threshold is -16.5, the ratio is 30:1, the knee is set to hard, and the attack and release are set to the quickest values that both plugins can accommodate. This results in attenuation between 10 and 12 dB, depending on the algorithm. Now under these aggressive settings, you'd expect the Pro C2's clean setting to distort less than the stock compressor. And this is the case for many of the stock compressor's algorithms. However, the Platinum Digital setting introduces very little distortion. Notice how the stock compressor introduces odd order harmonics, which suggests some mild squaring of the waveform. The third order harmonic is peaking around negative 80 dB, which is pretty low considering the amount of attenuation. Now take a look at the Pro C2 set to its clean algorithm. The wave is similarly squared, but to a greater extent. This results in a third order harmonic that's peaking at negative 50 dB. Like with the EQ, I'll defer any judgment as to whether this is good or bad, but at the very least it's surprising. The clean algorithm of the Pro C2 introduces more distortion than Logic's stock compressor. The same occurs with Logic's classic VCA setting. In this case, we'll notice a single third order harmonic. But as we select different algorithms, we'll notice that Logic's stock compressor introduces much more aggressive levels of distortion. Studio VCA and FET introduce similar levels with a third order harmonic peaking around negative 40 dB. Meanwhile, Vintage VCA, FET, and Opto introduce both harmonic distortion and a significant amount of noise. Furthermore, notice how inconsistent the amounts of attenuation are. With the Pro C2, I know I can switch between the different algorithms and achieve similar amounts of attenuation. Now this makes it easier to A/B the changes. But with the stock compressor, 10 dB of attenuation with the Platinum Digital setting becomes 40 dB of attenuation with the Vintage Opto setting. Now this could definitely make mixing difficult if you're not paying close attention to how the different algorithms could drastically change the plugin's behavior. So, whereas the difference in distortion levels between the stock plugin's Platinum setting and FabFilter's clean setting is surprising, this is the only perceivable flaw with the Pro C2. And if you want lower levels of distortion, the Pro C2's mastering algorithm should have you covered. That said, if you want fast compression and low distortion, then Platinum would be the better choice. Lastly, for analog emulation, the Pro C2 seems like the better option, unless you're okay with a lot of distortion and noise. Let's take a listen to the Pro C2 set to clean and the stock Logic compressor set to Platinum Digital. I'll ensure both are attenuating by the same amount and with the same parameters. Let me know if one sounds cleaner to you.
Call if you want him. He's here all night, stuck in a place where the bass is a synth line. The top free, always hit right. He organizes them in pretty white lines. This work. Call if you want him. He's here all night, stuck in a place where the bass is a synth line. The top free, always hit right. He organizes them in pretty white lines. This work.
Last up, let's talk about the reverbs. So similar to Logic's updated EQ and compressor, the reverb borrows some ideas from FabFilter's Pro R. We have various algorithms for rooms, halls, and so on. Additionally, decay rates are frequency specific. We can control early to late reflections, affect the stereo width, and adjust other parameters that you'll notice are included in both plugins. Now, for all intents and purposes, they function just about the same. However, there are some interesting differences in their behavior. Although it's difficult to measure, a reverb plugin can do something that's undesirable. If its algorithm uses a lower number of decay taps, these taps cluster in certain frequency ranges, causing resonances. These higher amplitude resonances have a ring to them, since they take longer to decay than lower amplitude reflections. This results in what's often described as a metallic ringing sound. Ideally, a reverb plugin uses enough delay taps to evenly disperse the energy across the frequency spectrum, resulting in timbre that's identical to the original signal, just reverberated. Now, if we run an impulse through these reverbs and freeze the response, we should be able to determine if they introduce resonances due to similar frequency clusters of delay taps. Now notice that the impulse I have is just about completely flat, maybe with a tiny dip in the lows if I'm seeing that correctly. Now when I turn on Chromaverb, Logic stock reverb, we can view the resonances that are introduced. For this capture, I used the dense room algorithm with the output EQ and frequency-specific decay disabled. All other settings have been kept to their default, except the processing quality, which I've set to Ultra. Although the lows look almost identical, we'll notice resonances in the low mids, high mids, and highs. If we use the Pro R2 and use the same settings, we should expect a smoother response or one with fewer resonances. However, this isn't the case. The Pro R2 introduces more frequency variation than I expected. Despite the flat settings, I'm noticing a big dip in the highs, in addition to moderate resonances in the mid-range. As I tried different Pro R presets, I also came to an unexpected realization. This plugin only uses one algorithm. The only difference in behavior comes from introducing the various parameters, such as decay time, the frequency-specific decay, and so on. For example, if I pick a different preset in a different category, but use the same settings as before, the reverb's behavior is the same as before. Meanwhile, each of the Chromoverb's algorithms is just that, a distinct algorithm with different behavior. If I switch between dense room and concert hall, but I keep all of the other parameters the same, I achieve different reverb behavior. The same thing happens with each algorithm. So whereas I thought Chromoverb was a copy of the Pro R2, it actually has a significantly more complex setup in which you can achieve a far greater array of sounds. One I find particularly interesting is the algorithm Airy. Notice that at least when compared to the other algorithms, both from this plugin and the Pro R2, it comes the closest to retaining the original frequency response of the impulse. So let's listen to Chromoverb and the Pro R2 setup with identical settings. I'll use the Airy algorithm for Chromoverb, and I'm limited to the one algorithm that's offered by the Pro R2. Let me know if you can tell which is which, or if one sounds better to you. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us, Sage Audio has been a mastering studio for 2 decades. To work with us, create a free account, upload your mixes, click Request Mastering, and leave any notes that you'd like. The master is uploaded to your account when it's done for you to review and download. And if you're not completely happy with it, request a revision. We're not happy with your masters until you are. The standard turnaround is $49 a track, the express turnaround is $59 a track, and it's mastered by actual mastering engineers. If you don't need anything mastered, or you'd prefer to do the mastering yourself, liking the video and subscribing to the channel is a great way to help us out. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.